It's a huge stretch of games for the 24th ranked UConn men's basketball team. And alongside Jacob Sondik, I'm Noam Watt, ready to talk to you about those Huskies on Run It Back. This morning, the AP poll came out. UConn stayed put right at the 24th spot. Their resume, number 18 in the net rankings, 3-6 against Quad 1, not great. 5-1 against Quad 2, good. 2-0 Quad 3, 7-0 Quad 4. Those Quad 3 and Quad 4, 9-0 combined records, it's pretty good when you're looking at a resume. 3-6 Quad 1, a lot of opportunities to boost that up in the coming week. UConn also 19 in KenPom and third in the Big East behind Providence and Villanova, but just in front of Creighton, Marquette, Xavier, and Seton Hall. That top 7, top 8 of the Big East is jam-packed. As a reminder, top 5 seeds in the Big East tournament will get a bye. So this 3-game home stretch coming up, you got Seton Hall, Xavier, and number 10 Villanova. Is this the biggest stretch of the year?
Definitely. You talked about it with the Quad 1 record. 3-6 doesn't look good on a resume, and I think this team is better than 3-6 against Quad 1 opponents. So these are all 3 teams that UConn lost the first matchup to on the road. So this is why you play twice, because if a team like UConn is good enough, they'll split one of those, and more likely than not, that win will come at home. They swept St. John's, they swept Marquette. We'll talk about that, and that's awesome. But against these teams, you want to salvage a split and avoid getting swept, especially with Villanova, because UConn hasn't beaten Villanova in a long, long time. So that's a huge one, but you can't overlook Seton Hall. You can't overlook Xavier. Big game, biggest stretch. I think so.
What is good is that those 3 games will all be at home. What's even better is that 2 of the 3 of them will be right across the street inside Gampel Pavilion. No excuses, UConn Nation. If we dog on the XL Center for not filling up, we got to pack Gampel. 10,000 seats, those got to be filled to the brim. The place has got to be rocking because, like you said, you got to split with all 3 of these teams. And I don't want to get swept by any one of them because if you do, to me, that's just lost opportunities. And that's not something that this UConn team should be doing. You said they're better than their 3-6 record against Quad 1 teams, but to me, I don't know yet. I don't know. We've beaten up on the bottom half of the league, and we swept Marquette. All right, Marquette, those are 2 good wins, but the win on the road at Marquette was before they really peaked, and the win at home is a win at home, which is good, but not as tough as winning on the road. The game against St. John's on Sunday was UConn's first win in games decided by 5 points or fewer. They were 0-5 prior to that, but they finally closed one out. Talk to me about the win over the Johnnies at Madison Square Garden.
Well, it's been difficult for this team to close, and it was the Tyrese Martin show. We'll talk about him more, but all 17 of his points coming in the second half. Poly and Marquette shades of that when a guy exploding in one half. And it was inside and out game by Tyrese Martin. He takes it inside. But the threes, none of them were rushed. None of them were that contested. They were in rhythm, and their defense locked up when they had to. St. John scored 5 points in the final 7 minutes of game time. That's super impressive. I don't care who it's against. It was a great win. Thank God they closed it out. There's always the sweat. They fell behind. They were down 7, and it took an 8-0, 11-0 run of sorts to get them out of it. But it was imperative to make sure that the week ended 2-1, not 1-2. Because a losing week in this conference, it's terrible. It could be a death sentence in terms of getting a top 5 seed and getting a bye. We talked about we don't want them to play on the first day of the Big East tournament. So I think it was impressive in the sense that they won. It wasn't a great performance across the board. Sanogo struggled. He's had a last 2 against Xavier. The big guys they threw bodies at him and it worked. St. John's, less big bodies, but they still found a way to poke the ball loose and force UConn to go to Tyrese Martin. So it was a great way to close it out, but it shouldn't have been that close. But that's the theme this year, making it closer than it has to be.
Tyrese Martin has those games, too, where he just sort of turns it on in the second half. He had 23 on the road at Butler in the second half, really willed them to victory there. He's a guy who, John Fanta told us he's the X factor, he believes. And he is really important. He's a senior forward who's tough, strong, and is shooting really well this year, over 40% from deep, when last year he was in the low 30s. So we'll jump back a couple games. The Huskies beat Marquette inside the XL Center, 80-72. Then went on the road and just didn't play well against Xavier, lost 74-68. The game against Marquette, again, Tyrese Martin had an all-around beastly game. And Adama Sanogo played really well again in that one. Double-double, I think 15 or 16 boards, and the XL Center was rocking, which Coach Hurley needed. He was talking about it beforehand. It was rocking, they won, but then they came out and they were flat against Xavier. What happened on the road in Cincinnati?
They couldn't get Sanogo going. None of that was possible, and they had chances they cut it to 5, and then Hurley got a tech, and then they cut it to 5 or 3 again, and then Andre got the tech, which we'll mention. But it's things like that. You got to be disciplined in this league. You got to be disciplined in college basketball to win it all. The best championship teams are disciplined. I mean, we've seen the last couple of years. So I'm not shocked that they came out flat. I would have loved to go 3-0 this week. Definitely would have moved up the ranking and put a little less pressure on the game. Not that they wouldn't have had no pressure against Xavier at home because they would have beaten them once. But it was a flat performance, and the bigs for Xavier, they tore it up. I mean, Fremantle kind of had Sanogo's number down low, and Paul Scruggs got going late, and Xavier's a team that I think UConn matches up decently well with, but not having your A game, you're not going to beat a team like Xavier on the road. And they had just lost to DePaul at home. That was in the back of their minds. You don't want to lose home games, especially back to back. So they came out flat, and it's not good enough against the only team you can beat going flat against is Georgetown. I mean, the whole list, the teams you mentioned, and then even St. John's, they squeaked by, and DePaul is no slouch either. So
yeah, and Butler just beat Marquette.
Just beat Marquette.
You got to show up to every game. I want to hear a player that's been standing out to you.
Got to be Tyrese Martin. Like Fanta said, the X factor. When he goes as UConn goes, and you're going to get the 20 from RJ. Like we've said in past episodes, it could come at 30%, could come at 50%. You're going to get those. Sanogo, for the most part, he's kind of been struggling the last 2 games. Didn't get a great rhythm going. But Martin, he's a two-way player. He does both. He's good on defense, and he gets the team fired up in a way that I don't think anyone else on the team does. I mean, the celebrations to get the team fired up, the guitar was awesome. Blowing kisses to the student section on Tuesday. He is that guy. We've heard the phrase, he's him, and Tyrese Martin is him. He is the X factor, and the last 3 games, I mean, 17, 18, averaging 9 boards a game, which is not something I'd expect, but you need it, especially because the defensive rebounding in Xavier, it comes to mind. It was poor. Xavier had a lot of offensive rebounds, and it led to them coming out with a victory. So, got to be Tyrese Martin in my eyes. He's been killing it this week.
I agree, and you got to have that second guy, especially on the offensive end, alongside RJ Cole, because RJ Cole can't always create his own shot. So for Tyrese Martin to be able to go out, shoot the ball really well from 3 is huge for not only his confidence, but for the team on the offensive end. Now, one thing I want to talk about quickly before we turn the page to the upcoming week is foul trouble, and specifically Adama Sanogo. He had 3 against St. John's, 4 against Xavier, and 4 against Villanova, including 2 in the first minute or couple minutes. And that's something that I thought we had turned the page from his freshman season. All off season, guys were asking Coach Hurley, what is it about Adama that's going to take him to the next level? And his answer was it's going to be his ability to stay in games for longer stretches of time by not fouling. And lately, we've seen that his Achilles heel come back and haunt him. In the game against Villanova, when both he and Whaley picked up 2 quick ones early, Eric Dixon started feasting. The game was gone from there. You can't have Adama Sanogo getting in foul trouble because he is just so important, not only as an anchor on the defensive end, but an anchor on the offensive end, because when he's in, the spacing is significantly better. So Adama Sanogo, he's got to stay out of foul trouble going forward.
Right. It's the lack of discipline this is what separates really good teams from championship level teams. And he can't get a rhythm going if he's not on the court. So we're like, oh, why is he blowing layups? Because the offensive sets aren't consistent when you're on the bench. And obviously there's not a perfect time to bring someone back from foul trouble. I mean, Hurley's tried to do it with Cole and Sanogo and Jackson, all guys that have struggled with foul trouble, but the lack of rhythm, it's everything. It doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but you look at the game flow, it's the eye test, and he's not comfortable when he's not out there for consistent periods of time. But at the same time, you leave him out there with 2 fouls in the opening minutes, and he gets his third 10 minutes into the game. It's all about timing, and that's a coaching decision, and that's on Hurley. But this is not it. The fouls specifically are on Sanogo. Lack of discipline, and he does no good when he's on the bench.
And you got a couple of really good bigs coming in Wednesday night against Seton Hall, the Pirates. You got Alexis Yetna from USF and Obiagu, who, sort of blocks everything in sight. So for Dama Sanogo, it's about staying disciplined, staying out of foul trouble. And for his partner in the front court, Isaiah Whaley, it's the same thing. We saw a juiced-up Whaley the other day against St. John's. That's what we need.
Blocking shots, contesting them.
Yeah. And especially with a Cook out for what's looking like an extended period of time with a foot sprain and a Samson Johnson who's too raw to really play any valuable minutes, you're going to need those guys to play well. Now, last time UConn played the Pirates, 90-87 loss in overtime down at the Prudential Center. Kaderi Richmond dropped 27 points, just went out of his mind. Really frustrating game. He scored like 17 or 19 points at one point. Real quick, how can UConn beat them on Wednesday night?
I think they got to limit the perimeter guys. Kaderi Richmond, I don't think he'll do that again. Hopefully not. Hopefully they didn't just jinx it. And Jared Rhoden also, because they don't have Bryce Aiken, so the scoring is going to be less distributed. It's going to come down to those guys and the bigs like you mentioned. So I think staying disciplined and getting off to a good start is key for this team because it'll make the margin of error, even though it's slim at the end of games always, and it's going to be a close game. I mean, I'd be wishful thinking to think they'll have it put away by the end, but it puts less pressure on having to come back, having to use all the momentum to make all the shots. When in reality, if you start off well, have the lead at halftime, and go from there. But it's foul trouble, and Sanogo, he can't have 2 fouls right away. Whaley can't have 2 fouls right away. Andre can't have 2 fouls right away, or else the depth that this team we lauded over is not as much as we think. It's really not because these guys haven't gotten minutes. Like Diggins been buried on the bench. Johnson buried on the bench. Gaffney's minutes, he hasn't been productive this year. So they're deep in terms of there are guys that can touch the court, but productivity is not there.
When you're looking at the first 2 guys off the bench who are going to need to produce, it's going to be Jordan Hawkins and it's going to be Tyler Pauly. And against a team with 2 really strong bigs like Seton Hall, those guys are going to have to hit some shots. And I agree with you, they do have to start strong. Get the Gamble crowd into it. An 8:30 tip, that place is going to be buzzing from before tip-off. You got to go out, go on a mini run, get the crowd into it to start. Because if you don't, then they're going to start to get restless. UConn's going to start to force shots, and it's not going to go well from there. Obviously, they can come back, but a good start at home does a lot. Now, last thing, I want to hear your outlook for the remainder of the season. UConn's got 6 games to go. They're sitting at 8-5 in conference play. Obviously, that one game that's not going to get made up is against number 8 Providence. Providence doesn't want to play us at their place, whatever. What do you think UConn's record down the stretch will be, and where do you think they'll finish in the conference standings?
Realistically, I think we're looking at 3-3. I would love a 4-2 because the games against we're looking to split the series against all the teams remaining. I mean, lost to Nova, lost to Xavier, lost to Seton Hall, lost to Creighton, and then they get DePaul and Georgetown, which I'm hoping they can take care of business. But we've seen it before. DePaul went to Cincinnati and they beat Xavier. Butler beat Marquette. So anyone can beat anyone in the Big East, but I think
except for Georgetown.
Except for Georgetown. Well,
they probably can't beat anybody in the Big East.
I really want to see if they're going to get a win. That would be, I don't know. It's going to come down to it for them. But I think they win. I think they go 3-3. 4-2 is definitely out of the question. Obviously, I'd love to run the table and go 6-0. I know the Big East, it's tough for teams to do that. I'm not tough for Providence, I guess. I mean, they're 21-2 and number 8 in the country, and Marquette had that big stretch. But I think this team is capable of it, and getting revenge and avoiding the sweep, especially the 2 games I know Hurley has circled, Villanova and Creighton, because they've had our number. The Creighton game was a piss-poor performance in XL Center, and then Nova, like we talked about, the foul trouble, they were out of the game right away. There was no, maybe we'll come back. There was none of that. So I think 3-3 is the most realistic. 4-2 would be amazing, and then anything better than that, this team could make a deep run. The momentum would be outstanding. And I think 4th in the Big East, 3rd or 4th in the Big East.
I think they're going to go 4-2. I think they'll take 2 of the next 3. Probably lose 1 in there at some point. And then you got Georgetown on the road. It'll probably be Patrick Ewing's last home game at Georgetown, which is crazy to think about. I'll be there covering. And then you have DePaul at home to close out. So you take 2 of the next 3, and then hopefully you win Georgetown and DePaul, and you got a little bit of buffer. That would lead UConn to 12-7 in conference play. Should be good for 3rd in the conference. Probably won't catch Providence or Villanova. Probably won't drop below Marquette, Creighton, Xavier, Seton Hall. So
at this point, yeah, no, probably not. But it should be exciting. It's the best time of year, and UConn's back to being a contender in the Big East. The Big East, the tournament, it's wide open. I really don't know who's going to win it. I mean, should be Villanova because they've been there before and it's Villanova, but I'm not going to count out UConn yet. I think they got a lot of fight left in them.
Yeah, I just want to see them start to sort of get into a rhythm, start to play their best ball and peak down the stretch. Because right now we're seeing the UConn women's team probably peaking down the stretch, starting to maybe get a little healthy. UConn men have been at full health. It's time for them to turn it up. That's all we got for this episode of the show. He's Jacob Sondik. I'm Noam Watt. Thanks for tuning in to Run It Back.